Hello, welcome to the Law of Karma, Destiny and Choice. Today I'm in the studio with Sister Denise and we'll be taking up the subject of enlightened self-interest. Hello, and it's good to have you back.
Thank you so much, Magla. Hello.
Enlightened self-interest. That's a very curious topic. What is that all about?
Well, let's look at it in the context of karma. Enlightened self-interest means that you do action which is good for yourself, but not at anyone else's expense. And enlightened means that you know the laws governing action, interaction, give and take, repercussions, consequences of actions. Most people are motivated by self-interest, but that kind of self-interest is at the expense of other people. You want to take profit in such a way that somebody loses and you gain. Whereas enlightened self-interest takes into consideration the subtleties and nuances of the laws of karma, so that first of all you do not come under the illusion that if you do a good action somebody else benefits but you are being altruistic. No. Any type of good action that you do is an investment, and when the investment is good action, it benefits other people, it's beneficial for the planet, for humanity in general, it's going to create fortune for you. And fortune tends to mean also this word punya that I mentioned before. And punya is the energy of pure karma that causes circumstances to be favorable to you and favorable to you and yours, you know.
Okay, so there is a distinction between selfishness and performing good karma. How does one make the shift? Because I would think that most of us are in the wrong category at the moment. How does one make the shift into, I don't want to use the word enlightenment, but ensuring that you're far-sighted as far as your approach to karma is concerned, and very specifically that you're not harming anyone else?
Yeah, this is very important, because if you do harm anyone else in the pursuit of your self-interests, then whatever you gain will be compromised, because you will also have to make a payment, and that payment could take off all of your gain, or you might get a short-term gain, but you won't be able to hold on to it, and you will lose it very quickly. Whoever you will damage, if it's people, if it's the environment, if it's your relationship with God, if it's your relationship with your family, at every step you will pay. And so that would be called very unenlightened self-interest.
What yardstick do you use to measure whether you're acting from a higher stance or not?
I think you would take a look at benefit. Are you benefiting yourself? Are you benefiting others? Are you benefiting the environment, whether it's the natural environment or the social environment? Is the overall consequence of what you do profitable? And in that case, you would say it's worth doing that. But people get motivated by immediate gratification. They do something to compensate from a bad feeling inside. If you go shopping when you're depressed, you buy something that you don't really need, but which is attractive at that moment and distracts you from your depression, and then you shelled out money for something you're not going to use. You're out of touch with the criteria that you need to be in touch with.
At any given point, we're faced with choices, which way to go, and an individual is at all times dealing with their own feelings. How does one learn to trust one's conscience within that context?
Your feelings are in a big range, depending on your internal condition, the immediate conditions around you, And it's often said that if you make a decision when you're in a state of having strong feelings, is unlikely to be a good one because you're not being rational.
Yes, that's the pitfall, because almost everybody makes decisions when they're emotional, even though they know that they shouldn't.
That's right, and it's because people just don't have the patience to wait until they calm down and do something which is sensible, which is rational, which is right by your conscience, which suits the requirements of the situation, and you're looking at things long term. And quite often you may have good opportunities to do something that corresponds to your intense feelings of the moment. Even so, you have to sit and think, okay, after 20 years, after 30 years, after 40 years, where will this go? You know, especially if you're making life decisions, career, your social position, status, will you have a child, whatever. You have to think about all these considerations, because if you don't, you make a choice that puts you in great difficulty, which is very expensive in terms of your energy, your money, time, all of these things, and you will regret. And so you want to give importance to being cool, and that doesn't mean denying your feelings. It just means that certain things you do when your feelings are in a cool state.
It's just that when your feelings emerge, it's like a tsunami that just overwhelms you. And a lot of people are guided, as far as their decisions are concerned, by strong feelings. This feels right. This doesn't feel right. I'm going this way because this feels good. Or not.
When a person has strong feelings, in many instances, it's a sign of karmic debt, which is coming up for payment and which provokes strong feelings to get you to do the wrong thing. And in so doing, you're suffering, plus you're creating more karmic account. Sometimes when you have strong feelings, it simply means that you're being motivated by negative emotions, which are also known as vices. So when you're motivated by a vice, then the consequence of any action you do from that motivation is going to be loss.
Okay, I'd like to interject right there. How do you know that you're being motivated by a vice? How do you know?
Well, there are lists of vices, lists of negative emotions.
Could you take us through some of them? I know it's a long list, but could you take us through some of them?
Well, I remember one time we were asked to collect all the different nuances of anger, and we came up with a good 100 different words which apply to different aspects of anger. It could be, giving the cold shoulder, not talking to someone, being extremely violent, sulking, so many things. It's all under the overall category of anger. So when you're looking at yourself, and self-checking is a very important part of the decision to operate on the base of enlightened self-interest, because always there will be negative emotions trying to interfere with that. So you look at yourself and you see inside, okay, what am I feeling exactly? You want to put a word on it. Sometimes a person's feeling strong feelings and they don't know what word to put on it. So we have to practice that. This is a study which has theoretical and practical components. So you study the written material that's theoretical, but then you have to look in your daily life, which is your lab work, you can say, and just see what circumstances provoke what feelings and put a name on those feelings. And if you say, okay, I am feeling jealous. And what do you know about jealousy? We know from the study that if you're feeling jealousy, you will do an action to harm the person you're jealous of. Or you may act in, which is you will do something to harm yourself around the person that you're jealous of. And that may be because you have a combination of jealousy and low self-esteem and a feeling of hopelessness. And so that will make you act against yourself. You see, okay, this is what I'm feeling. And even if you're good at it, you can see the cocktail of feelings that you're creating, like this combination of sadness and anger becomes rage.
How does one rise above the quagmire of negative feelings? To go back to your example, you have the feeling of jealousy against someone. How do you rise above it?
Well, first, before you can rise above it, you have to look at it straight on in the face, and you have to call it what it is. This is a very important component, because if you don't do that, it's very difficult to rise above it, because you don't have anything that's articulated between you and your mind to rise above. So if you articulate it and you make it clear to yourself, I am going to be now, or I am now, about to do something negative which is going to harm myself. Do I really want to do that? And this gives you the possibility and the space to say yes or a no, because sometimes you will say yes, I want to do it anyway, and I don't care what the price is. So okay, do it, pay the price, if that's what you want. But if you don't want to, it gives you a chance to say, oh, I'm not going to do that. That is really not going to work out. And why would you do that? Is because you're motivated deep down by higher consciousness, because you really value yourself and you really care about your self-honor and by what happens to you. So that will give you enough energy to not go there.
Motivated by higher consciousness. That is lovely. Tell us more about that. The reason I want to go there is because most of us are motivated by consciousness that's from oh so low. So being motivated by a higher consciousness is spiritually rather attractive. Sounds tasty in the mouth. Tell us more.
Well, there are many, many people for whom their honor and their dignity is the number one high criteria.
Yeah.
Give yourself a chance to think deeply about what constitutes your honor and your dignity. And for many people, it has to do with how the public views you. But for somebody who wants to be really enlightened, you would not be so concerned about how the public views you or how you look in the public eye, but how you look in your own eye. Your opinion about yourself is much, much more important than public opinion. And part of that reason for that is public opinion is very variable and fickle and unreliable. It's none of your business what the public thinks. It really is your business what you think about yourself.
Yes. Unfortunately, most people go through life placing far too great value on the opinions of others of them. Some the opinions of others in general, and others the opinion of significant others.
There's a quote that you use from your legal background that I love, but I can't remember it, about not giving importance to the views of the public.
Vox populi, vox Dei.
Yes.
The voice of the people is the voice of God, is or is not the voice of God.
Yeah.
Yes. Vox populi, vox Dei. Yeah.
So this is a very important aphorism, which is a caveat, you know. It really warns you that the voice of God, or the opinion of God, and the opinion of your own self are far more important than the next guy who's walking down the street, who doesn't know anything about anything, you know. It's like you're giving away your power to the general public. Why would you do that? You need to be in your power, and in order to be in your power, seated on your seat of self-respect, how you look in your own eye is the key to your real freedom. Otherwise, you put yourself in shame and you lower your head. And why do you have to do that? That's not meaningful. Just because you had a strong feeling provoked by something, it would be said in spiritual philosophy that you were deceived by a sense perception. Someone said something and they sent you off into a mentality that made you put a knife in your own foot.
You were deceived by a sense perception. In body consciousness, is that what happens to us?
All the time. All the time.
So we get deceived by our eyes, ears, nose.
Mostly it's things you hear and things you see. If you see something that may be specially put in front of you to make you crazy, because people know how to press your buttons, so they do something to do that and make you make a decision that messes you up, and that means you're totally under the influence of other people, and you're not under your own influence. You're not with God, you're not with yourself. You're functioning like a slave. This is not your dignity.
It is quite obvious from what you said that all of this enlightened self-interest entails being right with yourself and doing a lot of internal work.
If you care about yourself enough, you will do what it takes to advance yourself. And I think people are motivated by improvement.
There are individuals watching you right now who, because of their low sense of self-worth, because life has brought them so low, or to use your words, their own karma has brought them so low, look at all their vices and weaknesses and regrets and their past and think, I am a disaster. I am not worth anything. What is your message to them?
My experience when people do that is that they see something or they hear something which provokes their low self-esteem that is sitting in their subconscious, and then they start thinking those thoughts. When I encounter people who are doing that, I remind them of other things that they espouse and subscribe to, which can counteract that, you see, because you see and hear something which activates a sanskara. And the way I think about it, people got into this disastrous situation, especially with low self-esteem, as a direct result of childhood trauma. Because childhood trauma is very often something that happens that's a very strong message to the child that you are not good, you are not important, you don't have any value, it's good that you suffer, we don't like you. And so that goes in deep, and any time anything even remotely like that comes up, it will trigger that kind of thinking. And that may be just a tiny section of their awareness, their consciousness, but in a second it can take over the whole thing. Part of meditation involves looking at your true essence, and your true essence is before your trauma, because trauma is always subsequent to your essence.
Not many know that.
Well, this is why we're saying it.
There are many who believe that their damage is irreparable. no one and nothing can help them, not even God.
Even so, their damage was preceded by before the damage. The moment that a person is damaged is a moment in time, and before that they're undamaged.
Okay.
So your essence, your true essential identity is always before anything ever happened, however disastrous. You may be the Titanic gone down below the ocean, but before that you were floating. Before you hit that iceberg, you were just fine. And it's about coming back to how you were before that thing happened, because that's an incident that occurred that you experience in your mind via sense perception. So this is a philosophical concept, and the trick is to bring that idea into practical reality. And the way to do that is to remind yourself, okay, how was I before this happened? And then to say, the reality of me is before this happened, not as a consequence of this event. This is key. If you want to be enlightened and operate in enlightened self-interest, these ideas about the self, which are consequent upon trauma, part of that trauma is messages that you receive from people in authority over you as a small child, and this is why you believe you're a disaster. And the origin of your sense of self is before those people came into your life. And this is why the idea of being a soul is very useful, very practical, very usable in the equation, because you need to remind yourself that I existed just fine before these people and their behavior showed up on my TV screen, my internal TV screen. As with any other television channel, all you need is one of those remotes and you can switch channels in an instant. And this is a device that you can use to switch off that obsessive compulsive thinking based on delusion. In meditation you use these things, you practice it so that when something comes up you apply it.
From one who acts from enlightened self-interest, how does one bring God into this picture? Where does he fit in?
He's the one who informs you of who you really are. So are you going to listen to God, or are you going to listen to these characters in the performance? You know, it's up to you. What will you listen to? The voice of conscience, the voice of God, or the voice of these people? As in your saying, Vox Populi is not Vox Dei. So which one are you going to listen to? And you have to practice, because you're used to being completely dominated by sense perception. And you give away your power, you make yourself a slave, is contrary to your dignity. Why would you do that? And I think if it's articulated and you put it into words, what am I doing to myself? For nothing, for free. Why? No need. It's just propaganda that you bought into.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, enlightened self-interest. I'm not sure if you ever looked at your life from this vantage point before, but Sister Denise has shared a very deep message on how to look after your own honor and your own dignity. A very deep and powerful message, and one that I hope lands in your heart. Take care and goodbye.